Hey guys, I'm Alex from Fans of Games, and today I got something brand new for you, never seen on the channel before. We're going to be building a PC rig. About 8 years ago, my dad and I built our older PC rig, but technology's changed a lot in that time. So we figured it was about time for an upgrade. And I figured, why not take you guys along for the ride, show you some of the build process, the parts we're going to be using, and then you'll see the end result. So, without further ado, let's get started. We went with the 5000X case from Corsair because the look of the case matched the aesthetic my dad was going for, in that it could easily show off all the RGB and white interior. This case allows for easy access to all the build components and gives the build a premium look. So after unboxing the case, as you guys can see, we took off this whole back side. This back panel, which you saw swing open, is where they currently have all of their cabling going for where the fans would be. It comes with 4 fans already, one in the front, or one in the back, and 3 in the front here, but we are not going to be using any of the fans that are currently in there. We got our own Corsair fans that we're going to be adding. So right now, we are in the process of trying to remove this side fan guard so that we can put our fans on here, and then we're going to put those back. There's going to be 3 fans here, as is outlined. 3 fans in the front, 1 in the back, and then 3 up top. And then this cable, the cable management that you see here, this is all coming out, and we're going to replace it with our own. We have a CPU liquid cooler, which has an ICUE module with an LED display that, with the fans that we got, we can daisy chain those off of each other to minimize the amount of wiring that we're going to actually need. We should only need about 4 wires for all 10 of the fans rather than wires for each individual fan, which will be cool, and we'll get more into once we get to that stage. So removing this side fan plate has proven to be a bit more challenging than we anticipated. There's hidden screws behind the wire guard here. There's still a screw up there. And so we're gonna be removing that now, which we didn't want to do because we're gonna have to end up putting it back anyway. But in the middle, it's hard. You can't see it, but you can feel it. There's a screw back there that's keeping the side fan guard in place. So there, right there. Looks like there's those 2, and was there one up here too, or did we already get rid of that?
I think we got rid of it, but we'll find out.
So that's those 2. Does it come out now? No, looks like we still got one up there. Yep.
One more hidden.
Right back there. All behind the wire guard, which is a bit odd, but what you gonna do?
This is opening up the space for the 3 new side fans we're going to be using, which were not set up originally in the case's configuration out of the box. So since this whole panel was covered by this, that would prohibit us from using any intake fans on the side here. By removing that, we're opening up this whole area for airflow, which will bring air in through the side. We're going to be pulling air in from the front, and air is going to be exhausting once we install the all-in-one cooler at the top from the top, and then the rear fan will also be exhausting air out. So we'll have air coming in from the side and the front and being exhausted out through the top and the rear.
So this is the contents that comes in a package of our RX120 RGB ICUE link fans. So again, these are Corsair. And we got the 3-pack because of how many fans we're going to be putting in here. But what's really cool about these specifically is that the daisy chaining effect that I mentioned briefly earlier. So each fan has a set of 2 connectors here. The one on the left is what actually supplies the power between each of the fans and how they communicate. And in this bag here, we have these little adapters, little connectors. And you put this connector into the side that has the pin, but then this bag also has the just plastic connectors that help in securing the fans connections together. So this goes into the side that does not have a chip or a pin connector in it. So then when we get another fan here, let's just twist it around because we want to make sure that the pin sides match and the non-pin sides match. These will connect together. Though you guys can't feel it, there is a magnetic effect here, so they want to line up. You push them together and they stick. We're going to be doing this for all 3 fans, but just for the demonstration's sake, I'm just going to do it for 2. And the way this is going to connect to our ICUE hub, which is right here, is with a connector cable like this. It comes with a shorter one and a longer one. For the demonstration, I'll be using the shorter. And you'll notice that on the ICUE hub, there is a pin similar to that of which we connected the fans together. You put that in on one end, it's universal, so it doesn't matter which way you put it. Into the ICUE hub, and then onto one of the fans. And then this ICUE hub is going to be mounted in the section of the case that had all the wires that you guys saw me open up earlier on. And this is what will allow us to use fewer wires in that, or to have fewer wires in that case and allow all the fans to communicate together with the ICUE hub. These are the ports on the bottom of our ICUE hub here. And to connect the ICUE hub to the motherboard, which will run the ICUE control software for the entire system, you're going to use this cable here, which has on one end micro USB, which connects to the motherboard, this end via USB Type 2 or USB 2.0. And to supply power to the entire system, we have this cable here, which is a 6-pin connector. The flat end connects to the ICUE hub, and then the other end goes to our power supply. And again, that provides power to the whole system. And the motherboard cable here connecting to the ICUE hub via the micro USB will provide control for the ICUE software once we get that installed onto the PC. We went with the RX 120 fans because they match the number of RGB nodes in the fans that are part of the liquid cooler. They are also able to move about 11 more CFMs of air than the fans in the liquid cooler because they have a thicker body and steeper blade pitch. We needed to buy triple packs of the fans for cost effectiveness because this build is going to have 10 fans total. But the triple packs of the QX fans, which are in the liquid cooler, are roughly 133% of the price of the RX fans that we bought. These fans are supposedly very quiet, and although that wasn't a huge issue with the older build, it's a nice feature to have.
Okay, so the one thing you want to look at the fans, and this works the same as like the furnace. Mm-hmm. It's got arrows that show you which way the flow of air is going to be going. See the arrows here in the corner?
Right there. So
right.
This is the direction of the airflow.
Right. So since we're putting this on the side, we want this to be an intake fan. So when we put this on the case here, we're going to make sure we align it so the airflow indicator, which you probably can't see very well there, is going to be pulling air into the case, because we want cold air coming into our case to help cool off our components.
Yep.
We can line this up just with the cutouts in the case itself. Looks like everything lines up pretty well, so we can go ahead and just tighten those down.
All right, so now that we got the fans actually installed, we're going to put the old chassis back into the case. We got the fan chassis here secured. We got our wire containment back in there as well. So now we're in the process of removing all of the existing wiring that, again, we're not going to use. So we can clear the area.
These are all hubs for the existing case fans and expansion of the case fans that were currently in the case, which we're no longer going to need with the new ICUE system. So we're going to remove all the cabling from here for the front fans as well as the rear fan, and then remove these two hubs to have a nice clean appearance once we get the ICUE system fully set up.
So now that we removed the wires for these fans, since we're not using them, we're just gonna be getting rid of them now. I already got rid of the back one, so now moving on to the front three. And each of these just has 4 screws like you saw with the ones that we putting it on the side. Now I just gotta do that 2 more times. So now that we got the second set of 3 RX 120 fans connected, we got the ones that were in the front of the case removed. These are now gonna go in the front. So that's our next step. You doing all the corners now?
Yeah, whenever you screw anything into a computer, you always do the corners first and cross it when you do it. Like you'll see when we do that on the for the CPU cooler, we're gonna do the same thing.
All right, so now with our side and front fans installed, I can show you guys the daisy chaining effect that I was talking about. So both sets of fans, the front and the sides, are connected together via this one link that connects to the 2 ports on the bottom of those fans. And from there, the side fans have the second longer connection on the top, which goes around back to where all of our cabling was before. And if you remember that huge rat's nest of wires that came with all of these fans, each of them having 2 wires, comparison, 2 wires on, this is a fan that came in the case, and this is one that we are adding separate. 2 wires for each of these. For just one fan, 1 wire controlling 6. That's what we were talking about, using far fewer cables to make more than what was in there originally happen. And just to do a quick comparison between the fans that came with the case and the fans that we're adding, you can tell the blade span on the fans that came with the case is smaller than what we're adding here. So these fans, you're gonna be getting a lot more airflow out of the ones that we're adding compared to the ones that came with it initially. So a whole lot more air is going to be circulating through the entire case with the larger fans that we have here. All right, so here is our power supply. It's a Corsair RM series RM850, 850 watt power supply. And in the box here, so we've got some zip ties for cable management. Here is the power supply itself. Looks like we've got some plastic wrap on here. I'll just put this down so we can take care of that later. And then a whole slew of cables. So we have our wall adapter here. And
These are all our different connection ports. So the nice thing with most modern day power supplies is even though you have a cable in the bag here that'll correspond to all these, you might not need all of them. So for example, the main ones we're going to be using are going to be the motherboard cable and a lot of the 6-pin connectors here that are going to be used for both the graphic card as well as the ICUE system for our RGB lighting with the fans. But a lot of these extra SATA cables that are down here are useful for extra components that you may be installing in your case. But in our case right now, we're not going to be using most of those. So the nice thing with the modular power supply is we don't need to install any of those cables and add extra clutter into your case.
There are three main factors with going with this power supply. One was sticking with Corsair because of their build quality and reliability. Two, since it is an 850 watt supply, it exceeds the power requirements for the graphics card and all other components part of this build, giving us room for expansion down the line. Finally, the white exterior matches the desired aesthetic for this build. So before we get the power supply put in place, which will be right here in the case, we are hooking up the cables that we're going to need to it first, because it's much easier to do that out here than in the rather limited space in here. And it would have been more limited if we kept the platter drive case that was installed right here when we got the whole case, but we're not going to be using any platter drives, so just for the sake of not wasting space, we're not going to be keeping that in. But like I said, it's just much easier to work with hooking up the cables we need out here before we get everything solidified down here and the power supply properly installed. So we got these two lined up, that one. Okay, yeah, we're good to go. All right, power supply is now installed. We got our cabling going through the back, which I'll show you in a moment, except for the one PCI cable that's gonna be going to the ICUE control hub. But yep, power supply all screwed in. The exhaust fan for it that you guys saw when I was unboxing it, facing downward, just for better airflow, and you know, we don't wanna be releasing the heat into the cabinet. That's kind of counterproductive. So here are the motherboard cable and the second PCI cable coming through here. So yeah, that is now done. We'll be moving on to work on the motherboard shortly, including putting the hard drive, RAM, and CPU on there, getting that all installed. So here's our motherboard, MSI. Take a look at that in a moment. So yeah, this is our motherboard. Here we have our RAM, Corsair Vengeance DDR5 32 gigabit RAM. So these are two 16-bit modules to make up the 32. There you go. I don't want to drop them. So here is one unit. Got the RGB up there as well. Now for our hard drive, I think this is, no, the motherboard was the first non-Corsair thing that we unboxed, I think, so far. Now we're on with Samsung for the hard drive. But yeah, here's our hard drive. There we go.
Here's our processor. I'm not gonna take it out of the plastic here on camera because I don't wanna touch any of these contacts.
So basically the next steps are just going to be installing the hard drive, processor, and then the memory. So our hard drive, since it is an M2 module, this motherboard does support up to 4 M2 connections. The one we're going to be using is going to be right underneath this heatsink right here. In general, you normally want to place your M2 drive, your primary M2 drive, as close to the CPU as possible. So that is going to be where we're going to be putting this. It's going to need a smaller bit.
We wanted to go with a reputable brand, which is why we went with MSI, which is the same motherboard as the older build. That, and the other major filtering factor, was that the motherboard could not be completely dark so that it would match the white aesthetic of the build. My dad looked at Gigabyte motherboards, but he found that there were many BIOS issues associated with them when running with the 14th gen Intel chip. Some of the issues included not recognizing the chip and the inability to utilize DDR5 memory without a BIOS update. The MSI one we went with had great reviews and very little compatibility issues with the other parts we got. It is compatible with our Intel processor, DDR5 compatible to go with the newest generation of RAM chips, and it also has Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4 capabilities. Coming from no Wi-Fi or Bluetooth in the older build, this is a massive improvement. Again, this is more of a mid-range component, but we did not need anything state-of-the-art, and this will do exactly what we need it to. My dad likes Samsung solid-state drives because of their reliability. The 990 Pro is just the newest generation with faster read-write speeds compared to the Samsung drives we have in the current build. We went with Corsair memory for Corsair's reputation as a brand. This RAM chip is DDR5. We decided to go with 32GB of RAM in this build for extra performance and development work when using virtual machines, as well as the added benefits of having extra memory for gaming applications. We went with the Vengeance series, which is mid-range compared to the higher-end Dominator series, but again, this will do exactly what we wanted to. We also went with the white to match the aesthetic and RGB. This is the 14th gen i7. The K version is unlocked so we can overclock it. We don't intend on overclocking it, but it is nice to have the capability should we want to use it. We were originally thinking about going with the 12th gen because of the lower price point and because we don't feel we need the latest and greatest, but with the increased core count, 12 core 20 threads to 28 core 28 threads, it made more sense to get the additional cores and threads for the price difference, which was about $130. We went with Intel specifically because their processors tend to handle multitasking more efficiently than AMD cards, which will be useful when doing development work. AMD is generally considered better for gaming, but since that is not the priority of this build, we opted to go with Intel.
Alright, and we put our heatsink back on.
What's next, the RAM or the processor?
The next will be the processor. So I'm just going to unlatch it here and remove the shielding for the pins. Set it in, give it a little jiggle, make sure it's in securely.
Oh, is it supposed to happen? The
Yep.
cover?
The cover is just there to help protect the pins and transport. So now the processor is installed.
All right.
And last but not least, we will install our RAM chips here. These are going to go into
This motherboard looks like it can hold up to 4 of those, right?
It holds 4 DIMMs, but there are a certain order they need to be put in. I believe on this one it is slots 2 and 4. As you can see, kind of right there. They're lining it up. So you can see where it says first, and it's pointing to slots 2A and 2B. So that is where we're going to be putting our two RAM DIMMs in.
Yeah, there you go.
Doing it upside down is a little more challenging.
I think a little more towards you. There you go.
Push them in, make sure we get that solid click. Push on the sides. And there we go. So we have that part in. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to unbox the all-in-one cooler, because there is going to be a mounting bracket that needs to go on the back of the motherboard that's going to hold the cooler in place. So we will get to that and be right back.
So here is our Corsair ICUE Link CPU cooler with LCD display. So the mounting brackets that we need, that my dad was talking about, not right up here. So let's try to remove this. The hose is connected to it. While he's looking for the mounting bracket, we can start unwrapping this. Trying to carefully here. Here's our LCD display. So that's cool. Put this down gently. Here is the unit itself. Did you find those mounting brackets that you needed?
Yes, so just to give everyone a little bit of more insight into the cooler itself, the cooler is designed to work with both Intel and AMD processors. Since we're going with a Intel i7 14th gen processor, we're going to be using the Intel mounting brackets right here. There are mounting brackets for the AMD processor here as well as the screw spacers you're going to need that are going to be installed on the motherboard in order to fit the cooler head on it properly. You can also see here, which was a nice surprise, because when I was doing my research online, they were saying that Corsair doesn't include some more of the ICUE connectors and brackets, but they do. So we have a longer ICUE bracket here. We have two smaller ones that'll help daisy chain, as well as the extra power connection that you're going to need if you were just buying this as a standalone and not using any of the additional Corsair RX series fans that we're using, as well as a connector to help daisy chain to some additional fans as well. So we will begin taking the stuff apart and getting stuff mounted, and we'll continue back with you guys soon.
As a whole, Corsair is a big name in the tech industry, especially in memory and fans. They're known for their quality and reliability, We used them in the older build as well, but the appeal of the ICUE software played a big role in our decision to go with these specific fans. The fans can daisy chain off of one another, like how Christmas lights connect to one another to receive power. This will reduce the cabling required to run all 10 fans that are going to be in this build from 10 cords down to 3 or 4. Normally, each fan would have its own power and control cables going to a control hub, but with the ICUE system, only 3 to 4 cords are going to be needed for where we would be placing the fans. Also, these fans match the exact aesthetic we were looking for with the white outer case and the RGB lighting. The RGB was especially appealing since we are coming from fans that could only output blue light in the old build.
Okay, so this is the mounting bracket that needs to go on the back of the motherboard that is going to secure the cooler once we put that on. So I'm just going to remove the 3M tape that came on here that just kind of helps stick it to the back of the motherboard. Line it up with the holes here. And just press down slightly. From there, we're going to flip it back over and use the supplied offsets for our particular graphic card. So since this is a 1700 chip CPU, we're going to use these, and these just get screwed in to the bracket that we just put in. You just want to hand tighten these. You don't want to use excessive force to get it in. Gonna use a little extra turn there, and we're good. So the next part is we will mount the motherboard into the case, and then from there we will install the fan on the top, our rear fan, and then we will connect the LCD screen to the CPU.
So the motherboard has been lowered and placed into the case. Right now my dad is putting on the screw and spacers to secure it to the back because this is a vertical wall of the case that we just have laid flat right now for the installation here. We placed the motherboard in off camera just because lining it up was an intricate process, and once we had it lined up, we weren't going to take it back out and risk having to do all that again. So all the holes were lined up. It was 8 joints, and yeah, so that's everything is already on there, and we're just getting that secured now.
All right, guys, right here we're kind of picking up a little bit later. We did get the motherboard installed, like we were saying. We also hooked up all the connections from the case itself to the motherboard. This was a little bit of an issue at first because normally motherboards make it pretty obvious where the power connectors and reset button and everything like that go. This motherboard from MSI, which is the 790 AMAX Wi-Fi, did not have those labeled on the motherboard itself. So you actually had to kind of download the manual from the website in order to see where on the motherboard those were connected. But we do have those connected now. We also have the audio connections from the motherboard connected right down over here. And we also plugged in the USB 2 connection that we need from our ICUE Link hub, which is on the back, to the motherboard as well. This right here is the SATA cable that controls the 2 USB ports on the top of the case, as well as our power supply from our motherboard to the power unit below. So we have all that connected. We now recently just started putting the cooler, AIO cooler on the top here. So I'm gonna finish kind of getting the screws put into this so it's more secure. Then we're going to finish the daisy chain loop here by connecting our rear mounted fan to the cooler itself. And then we have another USB-C cable that controls the RGB and everything for the fan here that we're going to connect, and that's a USB 2 connection that we're going to put on the motherboard as well. So we'll do a little quick video of me screwing this in real quick, connecting those cables, and then we'll take it from there.
So to secure the cooling unit in place, we got 12 screw joints, 2 already in just to keep it up for the sake of the video, but now we're getting the rest in.
And we're not going to fully screw these in just yet, just to make it a little bit easier to move around, and I want to make sure I have enough leeway to slide the cooler around to get the cables connected for the ICU link and the other fan. Okay.
All right, so that's all done. And let's come around here. The port for the hookup was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was up there.
So this one, we're going to connect.
Apologies, but it won't be easy for you guys to get in there and see that because it's very tight. But he's got to hook up to the back of the fan right there.
All right, and we got that connected as well. And then
Now we gotta hook it up to.
now we can slide this farther back. We can also slide our rear fan higher up. We left this one loose as well, just to help us with kind of maneuvering around the back of the case here to make those connections. So we'll finish tightening everything up and then we'll be back. All right, so we rotated the case over. We do have the top cooler installed. We also finished screwing in the back fan here. We did make the daisy chain connection between the back fan and the all-in-one cooler. Also on the front of the cooler here, we did connect the 2 cables needed to connect. One is the bigger one here is the connection that runs to the ICUE module on the back, which we'll show you in a moment. And then the other one's a USB-C connection that actually we ran down through the back of the case and into a USB 2 connection here on the bottom of the motherboard. So our final step in this process is just to actually install the cooler itself. So we're just going to remove the plastic housing that had on there. As you can see, it's already got some thermal paste pre-applied to it, so we don't have to worry about that. We're now just going to line that up over our processor and the extensions we added in to the back of the motherboard earlier. And now we're just going to screw it down.
So this is what he's screwing in on all 4 corners right now.
Yeah, all 4 posts are connected. Just hand tighten them then right now. And then we'll give them a little twist with the screwdriver just to make sure we have a real good solid connection. Otherwise, you're gonna lose all the benefits of having your cooler on here if it's not secured tightly. All right, good to go.
All right, and here we have our graphics card, the final component of this build. It's a Gigabyte GeForce RTX 4070 Super card. So here is the unit itself.
We went with the Gigabyte 4070 Super, which is a mid-range graphics card for what's on the market now, but since this PC will not be used for super intense gaming, it'll be more than sufficient. It was about $670, so the most expensive component of this build. The PC will only be connected to a 2K monitor, so even with this card capable of producing 4K visuals, it'll be more than powerful than what we could possibly need or even use. By the way, we're upgrading from an MSI branded NVIDIA 1070. This new card can be overclocked to boost performance, but we're leaving it as stock settings for now. We went with the Gigabyte 4070 Super because my dad wanted better performance than a basic card without the extra price of the higher end TI series cards. It needed to be white to match the aesthetic of the rest of the case, and it was within what we deemed an acceptable price range for what we will need.
Now, the graphics card is being lowered in, attached to the motherboard. We had to take out, sorry, I'll show you what we had to take out.
Am I lined up here? I can't see from my
A little more. Okay, it's like, there we go.
All right.
That should be secure. We had to take out these two slots on the back of the case here. So this is the top, this is the bottom. So second and third from the top to get it to line up. But that is in there. Ooh. You got that? Yeah. Now we're just gonna put the screw stopper or the screws back in to secure it. We'll be good to go. All right, moment of truth. Everything is installed and attached. We got the graphics card going. Let's do our initial startup. We got it hooked up to a monitor just to see what happens. And there's life. Perhaps. Surprised the back fan didn't turn on, because those, yeah, these are all on, but the back fan isn't doing anything. Are those moving? No, the cooler's not going either. Alright, so we got the back fan and the cooler fans working now. So the only thing that we didn't do, we hooked everything up correctly. The only thing that we didn't do correctly was you kind of have to hook the radiator portion to itself, because like the fans and the radiator are not one cohesive unit. They're just, the fans are just screwed into the radiator microchannel assembly up there. So you have to connect a cable from the fan here to radiator right here. And that supplies power to the fans. And since they just daisy chain off each other, it supplies power to the back fan as well. So just doing that, we got everything working. You see the RGB is working, all the fans are spinning, and everything's good to go.
So after we officially got the new rig up and running, my dad began exploring the MSI BIOS to see if the machine would recognize if he inserted an external drive into one of the USB slots. He purchased and downloaded the Windows 11 operating system before starting this build, and using Microsoft Media Creator, had all the files loaded onto a USB drive. Once the PC recognized the drive, he began the Windows 11 installation process.
Well guys, this is it. The PC is built, working exactly how we wanted it to be. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed coming along with us as we built this and seeing the process. Thank you all for watching, and remember, stay cool everybody.